In this video, we'll uncover the top 5 best traps in the Queen's Gambit. Clever ideas that can catch your opponent off guard right from the opening. Let's dive in. If black accepts the pawn on c4, we simply play pawn to e3, preparing to recapture it with the bishop. Ideally, black should forget about trying to hold on to this pawn and instead focus on developing their pieces. However, if black is determined to keep the extra pawn, they might try pawn to b5. In response, we strike back immediately with pawn to a4, attacking the defender of the c4 pawn. Now, black has a few possible ways to defend. Playing pawn to a6 doesn't work. After we capture on b5 and they recapture, we simply take the rook on a8, winning material instantly. What if black tries bishop to d7 instead? Then we capture on b5, they take back, and now we play knight to c3, attacking the bishop. If the bishop retreats, it might seem like black is holding everything together. The bishop is defending the pawn, and the knight is defending the bishop. But white has a crushing response. Can you find the winning move for white? It's queen to f3. Now the knight on b8 cannot move because the bishop on a6 would be hanging. Black's only real attempt is pawn to c6, but that leaves the knight overloaded with too many defensive duties. We play the killer move. Rook takes bishop. If knight recaptures, queen takes c6 check. Incredibly, queen to d7 is the only legal move. We capture the rook on a8, forcing black to block with the queen again, and then we retreat the queen and pick up the knight as well. In just a few moves, we've completely destroyed black's entire queenside. This position is clearly winning for white. And if, in the earlier position, black tries defending with pawn to c6 instead, the same idea applies. Capture on b5, they take back, and again queen to f3 follows, attacking the rook and eventually winning either the knight or the bishop. Now, in the Queen's Gambit accepted line, let's see what happens if black plays smartly and develops naturally. We continue as usual, eventually reaching a position where black develops with knight to f6. We recapture the pawn with bishop takes c4. Many black players at this point like to fianchetto their bishop and castle kingside, so they continue with pawn to g6. Here, we calmly play knight to f3, continuing our development. When black follows with bishop to g7, we strike with an incredible move, queen to a forecheck. Now there are several ways for black to block this check, but almost all of them lead to serious trouble, except one. Let's look at the most common mistakes. The first natural response is bishop to d7, attacking the queen, but this immediately runs into queen to b3, a powerful move that attacks two targets at once, the weak pawn on f7 and the pawn on b7. Even if black castles, white can still apply heavy pressure on the king side with knight to a5, so bishop to d7 is already a mistake. What if black tries knight to c6 instead? Then again, we play knight to a5, attacking both the knight on c6 and the f7 pawn. If black castles, we can trade knights and win a free pawn. And if black tries to defend with the bishop, we have a beautiful fork with knight takes f7, attacking both the queen and the rook. Alright, let's go back. Suppose black tries knight to d7 to block the check instead. This move looks solid, but it allows a stunning combination. White sacrifices the bishop on f7. After king takes f7, we continue with knight to g5 check. Now no matter where the king goes, disaster follows. If king to e8, the king gets trapped in the center and will soon be checkmated. If king to f8, we have a beautiful fork that wins the queen instantly. And if king to g8, we have a forced checkmate in 4 moves. Here's how it goes. Queen to c4 check. The only safe square for the king is f8. The threat of queen to f7 mate forces black to block. We capture the defender, he blocks again, and finally, we deliver a crushing checkmate right on the king side. Now what if black blocks the check with the knight? Once again, you have the same bishop sacrifice idea, and followed by knight to g5 check. If the king moves back, the same attacking patterns we saw earlier apply. Even though this time black also has the option of playing king to f6, he is already in serious trouble. The king is completely exposed in the center. Just keep attacking and finish him off. The computer evaluates this position as a massive 6-point advantage for white. Let's go back. What if black blocks with queen to d7? Then again, you have bishop to f7 check. If the king captures, we have a stunning knight check, forking both the king and queen. Basically, no matter what black does, the position collapses. If the king moves to d8 or f8, he loses the right to castle, and you can calmly continue with bishop to b3 or queen to b3, maintaining full control. Now, the only reasonable defensive move for black is pawn to c6. There are no immediate traps here, but this position is still completely fine for white. That's the beauty of this line. There are so many ways for black to go wrong, and unless he plays with perfect accuracy, you'll always end up with a clear advantage. Moving on to the next trap for white. let's look at some variations where black declines the gambit with pawn to c6, entering the Slav defense. After a few natural developing moves, we reach a position where the center opens up and the pawns are exchanged. Now that the central pawn is somewhat isolated, we play queen to b3, attacking both the b7 and d5 pawns simultaneously. Black must respond carefully here. The two most common moves are queen to b6 and pawn to b6, but neither of them is ideal. By the way, can you find the best defensive move for black in this position? Believe it or not, the best move for black in this position is actually to retreat the bishop. It may look awkward, but that's the safest option. Now, let's look at the more common and more dangerous responses. If black plays queen to b6, don't exchange queens. Instead, simply capture the pawn on d5 first. If black takes your knight, you can recapture with the queen, keeping strong pressure in the center. And if black captures your queen instead, don't take back immediately, because your knight would be hanging. Instead, play the in-between move, knight to f6 check, forcing the king to move, and then capture the queen. This sequence keeps your attack alive and your position superior. Going back, the second most popular move by black is pawn to b6. Can you find the crushing response here? The best move is pawn to e4. This opens up the diagonal for your bishop and launches a deadly attack on both sides of the board. For example, if black captures with pawn takes e4, then you go knight to e5, immediately threatening checkmate on f7. The only defenses for black are pawn to e6 or bishop to e6, but either way, you continue with bishop to b5 check. Black will have to block with one of the knights, and then you simply play bishop to g5. Now both of black's knights are pinned and forced to protect each other. A hopeless situation. Eventually both knights will fall, and you can continue your assault on the exposed king. Even if after pawn to a4, black captures with the knight or bishop, the same attacking ideas follow. After the exchanges, the threats remain identical, and white keeps a powerful initiative, aiming straight at the enemy king. In this variation, if black captures with the bishop first, you simply give a check, trade pieces, and then pin both knights, completely restricting black's position. The key takeaway, in the Slav defense, if black develops the light-squared bishop early, which most players do, you can often finish the game right in the opening. Now, let's move on to another trap, this time in the queen's gambit declined. After pawn to d4, pawn to d5, pawn to c4, black responds with pawn to e6, entering the main line. Play continues naturally. Knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to g5, pinning the knight, and bishop to a7, breaking the pin. Then pawn to e3 opens the diagonal for our bishop, black castles, and we bring out knight to f3. Black play knight to d7. We exchange in the center, black recaptures, and we develop our bishop. Both sides bring their rooks to the semi-open files. After pawn to c6, black strengthens the center and prevents knight to b5. This setup is one of the most common in the queen's gambit declined, reached through various move orders. Now comes the trap, we castle, and one of the most frequent moves from black is pawn to h6, attacking the bishop and creating space for the king. So after pawn to h6, we retreat the bishop, and many players now try to get rid of white's bishop pair by playing knight to h5, aiming to exchange their knight for the bishop. But that's a serious mistake. The brilliant move here is knight takes on d5. Black cannot capture the knight because bishop to c7 would trap the queen instantly. If instead black takes the bishop, we simply recapture with our knight, gaining a strong central pawn advantage, a clear edge for white. Now let's move to the next trap, the Albin counter gambit. The main line goes, pawn takes on a5, pawn to d4, knight to f3 attacking the pawn, knight to c6 defending it, then pawn to g3 preparing to fianchetto. After bishop to g4 attacking the knight and indirectly the center, we continue with bishop to g2. Black's main idea is queen to d7, planning to exchange bishops. Here, castling looks natural, but if you want to catch your opponent off guard, play pawn to h3 instead. At this point, many black players get confused and aren't sure how to respond. Retreating the bishop would be a waste of time, so most decide to capture the knight. This exchange gives black a chance to grab what looks like a free pawn, but if they take it, you immediately capture on b7, gaining a strong counterattack. To avoid that, a very common move from black is to castle queenside, defending the pawn with the king and activating the rook on the semi-open file. But guess what? That's exactly where your trap begins. The crushing move here is bishop to g4, pinning the queen to the king. Now some players will try to defend with pawn to f5, but don't take the pawn with your bishop. If you do, black can simply capture back with the queen. Instead, you play the brilliant en passant capture. This opens up the file again, restoring the pin, and this time there's no escape for the queen. She's completely trapped.